Hi, I'm Mandy with your daily dose of true crime. We have to talk about this case. This is one of those, okay? One of those that makes you lose all faith in humanity, makes you question everybody you've ever known, especially probably your partner, maybe your husband or wife. This case has driven me to create a YouTube channel, so here we are. This guy really drove me to the edge. Let's just say that. He's Daniel Krug. This rat bastard Dan, okay, was married to a beautiful, intelligent mother of three named Kirstil. We got to give our girl Kirstil some credit because not only is she beautiful, but she is kind. She's a wonderful mother, and she is also intelligent and successful. Got a full ride scholarship in a prestigious engineering school to be a biochemical engineer. I mean, that's pretty fancy schmancy. She sounds like she's doing pretty well for herself. Our girl was doing the damn thing, and that's why Dan got a little upset when his marriage started crumbling. Kirstil didn't like how Dan is domineering, manipulative, has an explosive temper. He also was big on like corporal punishment with the children, and she was not. So she was just over it. 43-year-old Kirstil and 44-year-old Dan were living in Broomsdale, Colorado, where they live with their 3 children. Beautiful home, a beautiful life, and beautiful jobs. She's a biochemical engineer, and Dan, the Department of Health and Safety. And in his job, he works with computers. He works with secure digital systems, meaning he could be one of those that could pull off hiding IP addresses and navigating the dark web, which he does. Spoiler alert, but he does. But we'll get there. Okay, so here's what happened. Here's the tea. So what happened was they're on the rocks, basically. Dan, Kirstil, they're on the rocks. On October 2nd, 2023, our girl, Kirstil, she received a text from a weird number, and she didn't know who it was, so she looked at it. And it was from somebody she hadn't seen in over 20 years. Okay, so the text read, "Hi, Kirstil, it's Anthony. Hope it's going okay. I looked you up. I go to Boulder, which is in Colorado, near her, every few weeks. Thought we could hook up. You game?" Who is Anthony, you ask? He is Anthony Holland. He was a boyfriend of hers prior to meeting Dan, and they dated from 1999 to 2000, so when she was like 18. When Kirstil gets this text, she's thrown off, and she's like, whoa, I am married with kids. I'm good, like, respectfully, no. He didn't take that well, and he started becoming increasingly more stalky, and more, to the point where poor Kirstil was terrified to walk around. She was terrified to be at home. She was terrified for her children. She was terrified for even her husband, because her husband was getting targeted by this stalker too, okay? This stalker, Anthony, or the kids, their kids all call the stalker Kickman. So, spoiler alert, it's really Dan. Dan is the stalker, okay? I gotta get that out, because it's like messing with me. Dan is the stalker, has always been the stalker. Anthony doesn't have anything to do with this, you guys. Look, Anthony has nothing to do with this. He never did. Anthony hasn't talked to Kirstil or even thought about her in several years, and vice versa. So why is Dan still holding on? Fragile masculinity. And they'll even create the problem by doing stuff like this, because this is what pushed her over the edge, you guys. She wasn't going to leave for sure until he started with this stalker crap, and she started to catch on that it was him. So to recap, This poor woman has been married to this man for over 20 years. They have 3 kids together. They have had no major issues, no violence in their marriage. They've had their issues, but she's never felt in danger with him before. She's walking around in fear. Little does she know it's her own man that she has in her own house that she's been with for 20 years or more. Like, imagine that. I can't. Like, the type of things that Dan would pull with this stalker stuff was not just little texts from Anthony. These were vulgar, threatening, violent, and sexual texts. And he would do scary, terrifying things. Like, one time she went to the dentist, and Dan, posing as Anthony, drove to her dentist's office, took a picture of her car, sent it to her as Anthony, the kick man, the stalker, and has her thinking that he is literally following her in real life. And then he goes and takes a picture with his own phone propped up on a car, so it's a picture of him getting in or out of his car at his workplace. So then he sends that to her, and then she thinks her husband's under attack too, and that it's not just her anymore. And look at these texts, you guys. Like, the things that he says, like, just, I can't. One last thing that Dan pulled on this stalking hiatus on poor Kirstil, he had gotten onto the dark web, remember? He got on the dark web and put an ad up acting like Kirstil and put her phone number, asking for men to contact her. Like, what? Sir. So she was getting like texts like this, and I'm sure worse ones, because that's mild coming from the dark web. Like, what? He's like degrading her in any type of way possible when she's not out doing anything. He's calling her unfaithful because he has an issue, you know. So Kirstil's fed up. She's doing all these things to take measures. She's logging every single time this dude contacts her, whoever it may be. She's still thinking at this time that it is Anthony, her ex. So she goes to the police, is making police reports, trying to get a protection order, but they can't find Anthony. Like, they can't track him down. They can't trace where these calls and texts and stuff are coming from. Like, they just can't seem to find him. So anyway, at this point, poor Kirstil, she's terrified, okay, as anybody would be. She goes ham, okay? She's not playing around. She has a concealed carry license. She's got a weapon, self-defense classes. She put cameras up all around the house, had a security system put in, which Dan installed. Oh, Dan, thanks for installing those cameras, you bitch. He knew it was him the whole time. How dare he? And then he turned, would you do that to somebody? Especially your wife. Like, this man is sick. He's sick. So when Kirstil goes to the police, she tells a detective named Detective Martinez that she thinks it's Anthony. So they start looking for him. Can't find him. They're doing this whole investigation. And Dan is feeling the heat. Dan is feeling the walls closing in. He knows that he is going to get caught. So what does Dan do, you guys? What does he do? Douchebag Daniel does the worst thing he could possibly do. After terrorizing this woman for months. And at this point, she realizes, once they start working with the police, Dan switches lanes a little bit, and he starts acting like, oh, none of this is a big deal. And he's not setting the security system. He's forgetting to lock the doors. He's forgetting, he's not being very careful, like a loving, protective husband would be in this situation, to tell her like she's overreacting and like gaslighting her, making her feel like she's being paranoid and stuff. Like, are you kidding me? I would flip. And Kirstil caught on. She's like, no. something's wrong. And she started telling her friends, her mom, her brother, and her dad that she doesn't even know if she can rule out her own husband. And that's when she decided to leave him. It's always the fragile masculinity. Have you noticed that? She wasn't cheating. She wasn't obsessing over sex and men like you think she was. She wasn't. Like, she just was not. On December 14th, 2023, Dan decides he's going to do something drastic because he cannot handle his little ego getting bruised. So it's like, come on, get over it, Dan, Jesus. So on the morning of December 14th, 2023, Kirstil was last seen alive at 7:55 a.m. walking her dogs after she dropped her kids off to school. Went back to the house where Dan was laying in the garage waiting for her. Dan, you bitch. So this is all so calculated. Kirstil came back and Dan was in the garage waiting for her with some type of blunt force object that he hit her in the head with several times and stabbed her in the chest, ending her life. You know what Daniel also did before he murdered his wife? Daniel turned off the security system and the cameras, and he put tape over the cameras that he just put up to prevent all of this. And poor Kirstil had her weapon on her at the time. She also didn't see him coming. He got her from the back. She didn't even know he was coming. Dan. So he must have been done by 8:15 already, because Dan takes Kirstil's phone, takes it off of her body, and he drafts 2 texts on Kirstil's phone, okay? One is for Detective Martinez. Same text was drafted to and scheduled to send to Kirstil's brother. It says, "I can't do this anymore. I confess. I've had an affair for 18 months. We framed Anthony and pushed it on Dan. I just broke up with my boyfriend and we're coming to the station to give statements. Be there in 30 minutes. That's what he's doing at this time. He thinks all this is going to work, and it just fails miserably, which is great. He does all that to his poor wife and then leaves her there in the garage. Kirstil's phone was last used at 8:22 a.m. and Dan pulled out of the driveway to go to work and turned off his dash cam at 8:24. So while Dan's still at the house before he goes to work, he texts his own phone from Kirstil's phone saying this, talking about picking the kids up. And then he proceeds to text her all of these things back, to which he gets no response. Dan goes to work as per usual, okay? So around 12:30, he's had enough. He's snapped. He's going to call the non-emergency number and have a welfare check done. So for some reason, he just can't come home and check on her. Like, come on. He's worried about his wife because she hasn't answered any of his morning texts. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but the last thing I'm doing, if my husband does not text me back before noon, is calling the non-emergency line. I mean, that's just not my first line of action. Like, I would have went home first to check. He didn't even go home. He didn't have the nerve. He wanted them to find her because he wants to look innocent. But you know what, Dan? That means you look guilty. He has the neighbor lady, and the police go check at the exact same time at 12:30. And at 12:43, she was pronounced deceased. They found her in the garage. Officers found her with a stab wound to her chest and blunt force head trauma. He put her through that for months, and then when he decides he can't get away with that, he gets rid of her in the most horrible way. So poor Kirstil, our girl, may God rest her soul. Police notify Dan. Dan comes home. Now he's back, and he is having an absolute mental collapse in the front yard. The police immediately start investigating, and they have Dan come in, and they're obviously going through all his devices, all of Kirstil's devices, and they're really digging in. Why they could not do this when the stalking happened, why they couldn't trace it then, I don't know, but that would have been helpful. Maybe we could start doing that before people get killed. The police found a bunch of digital evidence in this case. There was no DNA evidence, but there was tons of digital evidence, and that's how Dan's dumbass got caught. So December 13th, Dan made some Google searches. His Google searches were, when is head injury cause for concern? How hard to hit someone in the head to make them unconscious? And how long can someone stay unconscious without getting brain damage? Does he not know the police can track that? Like, he's got to know, right? Man. But, he acts like he's so smart, but yet he's not that smart. It's like, I don't understand. So the police are investigating everything, and then they finally find Anthony. Why couldn't they find Anthony before? But they find Anthony. They talk to Anthony. They find out Anthony was in Utah this whole time, which is 7.5 hours away from where he is. And he has been shopping with his girlfriend in Utah, and he lives in Utah, and he has for years. And that checked out. Now what, Dan? You know, like, now what? So the police confront Dan with all of that. It all adds up, Daniel. Here we are, right? Dan is like, well, then I don't know who could have done it. And the police remind him that although he unplugged his own cameras and covered his own cameras up, the neighbors still have cameras. So they would have seen a third party entering at any time, and they didn't see that. So now what, Dan? The only person in there that was you. The police obviously are zoning in. They know it's Dan. One of the fake email addresses he used was traced to his workplace server. Not only that, his burner phone that he used was registered at the library. The cameras were disabled right before this happened. They found all the texts that Dan put on Kirstil's phone and on his phone, and all the texts. So you can't tell if he's getting off to this or if he's... I can't tell with Dan, because that's how weird Dan is. He's weird. He likes weird shit. And we don't like Dan. I don't like him. I'm over him. So Dan knew after he left that police interview that the jig was up for him. I think he knew. When Dan was arrested on December 16th, he was caught just in time because he had this letter. I'll just let you read it. To his, I believe that's his mom. It says to give it to. So clearly he was planning to take himself out, and I'm glad they caught him before, because honestly he needs to sit in prison. And an officer went up to Dan in the back seat, and he asked him, Dan, would you like me to tell your kids that you killed their mother, or would you like someone else to tell them? And Dan said, I would like a lawyer. And to this day, he has never admitted to any of this. He has not taken one little lick of accountability for any of this. He still is denying it. He's on the phone talking shit about Kirstil's family. It's just a mess. Like, how dare you, pal? How dare you? Okay, so Daniel was charged with 1 count first-degree murder, 2 counts of stalking as a level 5 felonies, and 1 count of criminal impersonation for poor Anthony as a level 6 felony. He had a trial that lasted a little over 2 weeks. The state had a very strong case. He was convicted of all 4 counts on April 18th, 2025. So just this year. Of all 5 counts. So bye, bitch. He was sentenced the next day, April 18th, to life without the possibility of parole, plus 9.5 years for the stalking and the criminal personification. So bye, Dan. Have fun. And that's the sad case of Kirstil Krug. My heart goes out to her family and her children and her. I'm just getting to the point where I don't really want to risk it anymore. You know what I mean? Like, cases like this out here, this is sick. This guy's like beyond the limits, okay? I already know he's having a hard time though in prison. I mean, this is how he be acting. You know, he ain't having a good time in there. They're stealing his lunch trays. Like, that man is getting exploited, I promise you. He is not having fun in there. And that's the best thing you could be getting right now, is exploited. This case made me see that all of us non-homicidal partners out here, men and women, all of us non-homicidal partners without personality disorders, we all need to team up and put a stop to this shit, because this has gone on too long. We should be a community, you guys, because we could all learn from each other and learn from these idiots and avoid the fuck out of them before they even get us. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, this was my very first video, so I hope people will comment and subscribe and like and ring the bell and all this stuff. Please, thank you.